My name is Peter May. I've been a general practitioner, which is a family doctor in Southampton for some 30 years.
What role do you see the professional mental, medical, counselling, psychotherapeutic bodies playing in the UK in challenging Judeo-Christian values?
In all sorts of ways. One of the things that's actually a very central and pivotal statement in the Gospels that Jesus said, "For this reason I came into the world, to bear witness to the truth." And Pilate asks his cynical question, "What is truth?" and walks away. Truth is actually at the heart of what Christians are about. We're grappling for truth, we're pursuing truth. And fundamental in our pursuit of truth, in many areas of life, in understanding the world we live in, is science. And so scientific truth is of very great importance. We go where the evidence takes us. And in this particular area, it seems to be swamped by ideology rather than a rigorous analysis of truth.
So all of these bodies appear to speak with one voice. How and why do you think they've achieved this singularity of purpose?
With many areas of life, we go in with presuppositions. And all our conclusions are worked out on the basis of fundamental assumptions that we're making. So if you assume that homosexuality is an entirely healthy option, that people are born with their sexual orientation, then you will assume that that is the way it should be. And then anyone who wants to alter sexual desires is trying to do something that is unnatural. Whereas if you approach it with the assumption that the natural order of sexuality is male and female for the uniting of their relationship, but also for the procreation of children, and therefore this is the natural approach, then you're more likely to be sympathetic to people who have homosexual desires and want out of it. You would appreciate their distress that this doesn't fit in with what they understand to be the way the world is.
Can you briefly highlight the issues that you believe fail to reflect scientific rigour that we've come to expect from professional bodies?
One of the issues that we have, Dermot and I have taken up, is the completely ignoring of fundamental truths. For instance, if you're trying to approach this issue of whether homosexuality is natural and you are born that way, the obvious place to look at is twin studies. What happens to identical twins? Are they always the same? And this is just one area that's been completely ignored. Now, I don't think that's just ignorance. That is a deliberate suppressing of the evidence. The twin studies cry out against the fact that people are born this way. So the other thing that has been completely ignored in this matter, which in the population at large everybody knows about, and that is that people change their orientation. This is a commonplace, and there is good documented evidence that people change. It's more common amongst women than amongst men. It's more common amongst young men than older men, but people do change. They have, they would say on a given day they are heterosexual or homosexual, and 5 years later they would say something different. Now, the Royal College of Psychiatrists has stated that people cannot change. It's nonsense. And it's well documented nonsense.
What's the issue with the Royal College of Psychiatrists?
There are a number of issues. The particular issues, the main issues that we took up were this business of what is the evidence that people are born with their sexual orientation, and what is the evidence that they cannot change? These seem to me to be entirely fair and appropriate questions. We addressed them to the President of the Royal College. She never replied to us. After 2 months, we had a letter saying we will not discuss these things. Now, I think that's gross. It's rude on any level, but in terms of their medical responsibilities, it's gross. We ask proper, well-researched and detailed questions about the science, and they won't discuss it. But a year later, they just quietly changed their public statement, conceding both these points, that people are not born with an orientation. It develops, it is shaped by later experiences, and people can change, and they do change. They say, as though this is a small group of people, that some of them are bisexual and can choose. In fact, the evidence shows that more people claim to be bisexual than homosexual. There is enormous potential for choice, and people do change. They now admit both those key things which they formerly denied.
What's the issue with the General Medical Council?
The General Medical Council, there is a lot of concern in medicine about fraudulent interpretations of science. So much so that a former editor of the British Medical Journal thinks these people who fraudulently report things should be criminalised. And he makes the point that actually to investigate false claims is very difficult. Now, when I've tried to investigate these things, it's taken a lot of time. I've got access to an e-library. I can dig out all this stuff. Most people haven't got that. They would find it enormously difficult to work out, is this scientific claim true or false? Now, the General Medical Council, quite properly, launched a national campaign to alert doctors to the business of scientific fraud, to encourage whistleblowers to blow the whistle on when they know things are not right. They say that it's fundamental that people can be challenged and ask questions, and the questions should be dealt with properly and rigorously. And they took this roadshow all around the country. So it seemed only appropriate that we should draw this particular matter with the Royal College of Psychiatrists to them and show them this example. And they won't handle it. They're a toothless tiger.
Do these facts have relevance for the Church of Christ today?
There is a massive undermining in society of family life. We seem to cherish the broken family, and yet the nurture of children of a mother and father has to be the primary and best way for children to flourish. To be denied a mother or a father is a great tragedy. It's necessary for many people, but it isn't something that we should see as the natural good. The family is the key source of health care in the community. The children care, as I'm finding now, the children care for their grandparents. The grandparents babysit for the children. We share medical knowledge, shows, oh, this is just a sore throat, don't worry about it, give some paracetamol. All these factors of care. When somebody is disabled, it's the family who visit. When people are alone, just deserted, it's the family who come in and care. So in all these ways, the family is the ideal method of care in the community. It's our prime responsibility to love our families, and that love hopefully will spill out into the wider family and into the community, but the family have to come first. So these issues have big implications for society.
Do you think they are issues for Christians primarily, or do they also affect people of no faith?
Sexual desires affect everyone. And we all, reluctant as we often are, have to control our desires and channel them in certain directions. Sexual anarchy in society is frightening. The illegitimacy, the disease, the lack of relationship, the social isolation of people, if they're not locked into a caring, loving community that's cemented by the one flesh relationship, which is so fundamental in Christian understanding of society, then there is mayhem. So we have to control our desires, and we have to focus them. And the question is how we focus them, where we focus them. But we're not a slave to our desires. This is a great myth that we have to fulfill every inkling, and it leads to anarchy. Everyone is affected by the maturing of their sexual desires. And one of the things that we're learning in our generation, which when I was at medical school we had no inkling about at all, was that it was about the laying down of neurological pathways in the brain. Now, I was taught by a psychiatrist many years ago that adolescence continues till you're 25. And I think he said this on the adolescent behavior continuing into the 20s. Now we know that the brain itself isn't fully developed until you're well into your 20s, mid-20s. This has enormous implications for adolescence. If adolescence carries on that long, what you experience in adolescence, you're laying down neurological responses, pathways of desire, which can be molded and shaped by your activities. So you're reinforcing in your adolescence, you're laying down and reinforcing what are going to be the instinctive responses that you will enjoy in later life. So it isn't surprising that many adolescents feel homosexual desires, but neither is it surprising that the vast majority of those who at the age of, say, 16, of young men at 16, by the time they're 18, will see it very differently. And if they, at 16, say they're homosexual, at 18, they probably won't. So we have to allow for people to not set down pathways, and we see this in all sorts of other areas such as pornography. If you constantly reinforcing those pathways, it's very difficult to throw off. Similarly, if your promiscuity becomes very difficult to throw off, later in life adulterous desires become laid down and very difficult. There are no cures, there are no instant, you can't turn a switch on these things. One of the concerns I've got in this matter is the oversimplistic way people talk about therapy as though there is a magic cure. There certainly isn't. If you've wrestled with these things in your adolescence or your early adult life, they probably will be recurring throughout life and have to be dealt with. You've got to face them. The battle goes on. And everyone is affected by this. We have to learn to control our sexual desires.